So today's is December 6th. Okay, I was told to wait for a bit.
Xin chào sư cô. Bây giờ là phần thông dịch của Pháp của Ngài sang tiếng Anh. Xin mời sư cô Thiên Tuệ thông dịch. The following is the translations in Sayale Arama Meta will be doing the translation. We're inviting Sayale to translate right now. Thank you, Sayale. Sorry about the delay.
Thank you, host. So today is Sunday, December 6, 2020. The Dharma talk is 8:30 a.m. We will start by reciting Namo Tassa 3 times. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. And then after that, we will taking refuge in the Triple Gem. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dhamma. I take refuge in the Sangha. For the second time, I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dhamma. I take refuge in the Sangha. For the third time, I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dhamma. I take refuge in the Sangha. After taking refuge in the Triple Gem, then we will start with taking the precept. For the retreat, we will take the 8 precept. The first precept is trying to abstain from taking life. The second precept is trying to abstain from taking what is not given. The third precept is trying to abstain from sexual practices. The fourth precept is trying to abstain from false speeches. The fifth precept is trying to abstain from taking intoxicant that can cause carelessness and forgetfulness. The sixth precept is trying to abstain from eating at the wrong time, mainly from noon until dawn the next day. The seventh precept is trying to abstain from dancing, singing, listening to music, watching show, wearing garlands, perfumes, ointments, etc. And the eighth precept is trying to abstain from staying or lying on high and luxurious beds and seats. So after that is the procedures for taking refuge as well as taking the precept. Before the talk says he recite Imaya Dhamma Nu Dhamma Pati Pati Ya Budang Buje Mi. With this practice that conform to the Dhamma, I pay respect to the Buddha. Imaya Dhamma Nu Dhamma Pati Pati Ya Dhammang Buje Mi. With this practice that conforms to the Dhamma, I pay respect to the Dhamma. Imaya Dhamma Nu Dhamma Pati Pati Ya Sanghang Buje Mi. With this practice that conforms to the Dhamma, I pay respect to the Sangha. So when the yogi, at the beginning of the Dhamma talk, normally we all, first of all, taking refuge as well as taking the precept. So when we take refuge in the triple gems, which is the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, we have to understand that taking refuge, that means to have faith, to direct our mind towards the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. When a person has faith in the Buddha, the person believed that the Buddha, he was a historical figure. He was a real person that lived many years ago. And he was the one who enlightened, understand the truth, realize the truth, and taught the truth for us to follow so that we can understand the truth the same way he did. And this Dhamma that we say, and then after taking the refuge in the Buddha, we take refuge in the Dhamma. So what is the Dhamma? Having faith in the Dhamma does mean that having faith in the truth, understanding the truth, realizing the truth, and this truth that we talk about is the ultimate reality, the ultimate truth. It's not the conceptual truth, but the ultimate truth. And this ultimate truth refers to the intrinsic nature, the characteristics of all phenomena that surround us. And this intrinsic nature of this natural phenomena is nothing but namas and rupa. We as a human being are made of two things: nama, consciousness, rupa, material qualities. So when the person practices vipassana meditations and understanding or experiencing the intrinsic natures of this nama, consciousness, as well as rupa, material quality, or in other words, seeing the bodies and mind, then the person actually understanding or realizing the Dhamma. And when a person realizes the Dhamma, the person sees the Buddha, and that person can be considered as an Arya, a noble one. So when it's come to this body, we refer to the four major elements. The four major elements are earth element, water element, fire element, and the wind element. And when the yogi practice vipassana meditation, the yogi want to observe and want to contemplate on these intrinsic natures of these four elements. So how these elements manifested is that for the earth element, the manifestations of it would be heaviness or lightness. As for the water element, it would be cohesion. As for the fire element, that would be temperature, either coldness or heat. And for the wind element, that would be vibrations, movements, and expansions. That is the body. What about the mind? The mind, the characteristics of the mind, it just simply cognize the objects, knowing the object. It's just very simple. Knowing is the functions of the mind. When the mind cognize the object, is know simply that that is the characteristics of the mind. So in the mind, the Buddha also divided into smaller terms for too easy to understand. Is that it could be divided into the feeling Vedana, perception, volitions, as well as consciousness. For the feelings, when a person practices vipassana meditation, the person would be able to see that there's three different kinds of feeling. There would be pleasant feeling, there would be unpleasant feeling, there would be neutral feeling than when the person contemplates in the body. And in terms of perception simply is just marking marks or leaving marks so that we would know to have the reference for the future's understanding. And when it's come to volitions, it's a little bit more complicated. And Sarachi say that it might require some understanding of the doctrine. But to put it simply, it's more about what is going on in the body is his mind. Where is this sadness, this happiness, if it's good or if bad, is this natures or the karma or those things. And again, consciousness is just knowing the objects, the consciousness. So when the person first start practicing vipassana meditation, the first chapter that we refer to the anapanapappa, that means that practicing of the breathing. So we breathe every day, we breathe at every single moment, but many of us are not aware about breathing, or many of us do not even know what is this breathing in the in-breath as well as the out-breath. So the in-breath, each in-breath or each out-breath is actually the manifestations of the wind element. When the yogi would be able to observe each in-breath from the beginning to the end, as well as each out-breath from the beginning to the end, the yogi might see that there would be vibration, there would be movements, as well as expansion. So when the yogi trying to pay attention or direct the mind to the abdomen, which is the middle part of the body, or the stomach, the abdomen, each in-breath, it would be the cause. And when the breath comes in, then the abdomen starting to rise. And when the movement starting to rise, it would be rising. Then each rising like that, there would be vibrations or movement of the rising. Same thing when the breath, when the breathing, when the breath start to come out. So when we breathe out, then the abdomen started to fall. And when it's falling like that, same thing when the person be able to observe that, they will see that there's the movements of collapsing, of falling. And then when the yogi be able to contemplate and experience that, each rising from the beginning to the end, each falling from the beginning to the end, yogi will see that, there's nothing so much as the abdomen. The abdomen is only the concept, the word, the label that we put there. But what is important is that there is rising, there is movement, there is vibration. Same when it falls, there is falling, there is movement and vibration. And when the yogi see that, the yogi understanding the intrinsic nature or the characteristics of the wind element, and knowing that way is actually panya, wisdom. And that is knowing the ultimate reality or the ultimate truth, or the Dhamma. So for 45 years of his teachings life, the Buddha taught nothing but how to practice in order to see the truth, in order to experience the truth, the ultimate reality. And seeing that way, like Sayachis mentioned earlier, that means samadhi, the right way, understanding the intrinsic nature, the characteristics of the body, understanding the intrinsic nature, the characteristics of the mind. And when the yogi be able to see that and experience all that at the present moment, the yogi can be considered as living in the present moment, living according to the Dharma. And live it that way, the mind is not influenced by the past, the mind does not influence by the future, the mind does not wanders around, and is actually the way that the mind would be liberated at that very moment when it stay in the body or the mind at the present moment. So that is only the theory when Sayachis explain how to practice and what does it mean when the yogi practice vipassana meditation. What important is that yogi have to practice themselves, because theories is just understanding. But when you practice, you will be able to experience it, and that is the wisdom that arises in you, and that wisdom will be able to help you understand the not by thinking but understanding by direct experience. So that is the chapters in terms of Anapanapapa. Moving on to the next chapter is talking about the posture. So not only we have to breathe in order to live, but throughout the day we change our posture very frequently. Then there are four major postures: sitting, walking, standing, or lying. So throughout the day, if yogi pay attention, all we do is just all activities that we do is all stay in these four different postures. So when the yogi do all these things, all these posture changes, the question would be, are you aware that, let's say, if you are walking, do you know that you are walking? If you are sitting, are you aware that you're sitting? Same thing with lying or standing. So we do all these postures every day, but we are not aware of it, or we do not know that. So therefore, that is not knowing. The mind is just wandering around. The mind is not focused, and the mind does not stay in the body. And that way cannot be considered as living. So it's important for us to remember all these postures that we have. And because that is like the next chapter, when a person practice vipassana meditations or meditations at the beginning, then we would talk about, first of all, pay attention to the breathing, the in breath, out breath. And secondly is pay attention into the body, the posture. And this postures is just that trying to direct the mind back into the body, remind the mind to stay in the body at the present moment, so that the mind know what the body is doing at the present moment. Either the body is sitting, either the body is standing, either the body is walking, or the body is lying down. And in order for the mind to be able to for the mind to remember to stay in the body or stay in the mind at the present moment, that is the work of sati. Sati is a cetasika, a mental factor that arises together with the mind, sees together with the mind, have the same object at the mind, as well having the same base of the mind. So again, the mind is function is simply cognize the object, knowing the object. But the work of sati is remind the mind to let the mind not stay in the to remind the mind stay at the present moment, not go into the past or go into the future, so that the mind can stay and not knowing what is going on in the body, what is going on in the mind at the present moment. And without sati, the mind would keep on wandering into the past or the future and not stay in the present moment. And that way, the mind would just not have any power, any strength, and the mind is not concentrated. And when there is no concentration, panya, wisdom, cannot arise. So when we practice the Dharma, or when we practice the teachings of the Buddha, simply put is that we practice three things: sila, morality, concentration, samadhi, and wisdom. So sila as the foundation. Every time when we listen to the Dharma talk, we always observe the sila, because we have to make the conditions for our mind. Without sila, our mind, without sila, the body would be able to do many unwholesome things. And then without sila, the mind would not be conditioned to the right way in order to concentration to arise. So sila is very important. So when sila is pure, then we would be able to train the mind to gain concentration. When the mind does not go into the past, when the mind does not go into the future, when the mind only stay at the present moment, not let thinkings and thoughts arise, then the mind would be concentrated. And with concentration, of course, penya, wisdom would arise. So again, the three things that we need to do when we practice is that sila, we have to purify our sila bodily as well as mentally. After sila is pure, then we practice samadhi, concentration. When there is concentration, panya, wisdom will arise. And with this panya, wisdom, we will be able to experience the intrinsic nature, seeing the characteristic of the natural phenomena of the body as well as the mind. And seeing that way is the right view, samadhi. So it's also important that we know how to direct the mind. So right now, according to Mahasi Sayadaw method, we're trying to direct the mind to the middle part of the body, or called the abdomen. And when we direct the mind to the abdomen, we let the mind stay at the abdomen in order to observe risings, falling of the abdomen. So this directing of the mind is not just direct the mind to anywhere, direct the mind back into the body. And this because when we direct the mind back into the body and with sati in the mind, then sati would remind the mind to not go anywhere and stay at the present moment. And then following the object, let's say either the in-breath or out-breath, or the rising of the abdomen or the falling of the abdomen, we have to practice ardently and wholeheartedly in order to follow and to see the characteristic, how the rising works, how the falling works. And then when there's risings and when they're falling like that, what is the manifestations or what kind of intrinsic nature the person would be able to observe. So when the person practicing vipassana meditation and the person be able to observing each rising or each falling as well as each in-breath and each out-breath, the person can see that. After each in-breath, then it stopped, and then it's after its out-breath, it stopped. And then same thing after it's falling, when it's rise to the maximum, it cannot rise anymore, then it will start to fall. And then when it cannot fall anymore, it's to fall to all the way to the end of the falling, it cannot fall any further, then it starts to rise again. So it would changing from rising to falling, and then from falling to rising, changing like that from one moment to another. And when person see it that way, they see that, oh, rising come and rising disappear, falling come and falling disappear. Same thing with the in-breath come and disappear, out-breath come, in-breath, out-breath disappear. Then when the person see it that way, the person see that everything, it just comes and disappear, come and passes away from one moment to another. It's actually not permanent. It's actually impermanent, a nature. And because of this impermanent, it's not this is dukkha, it's unsatisfactory, it's not happy at all. So actually practicing vipassana meditation, all the yogi sees is the suffering, the anicca, the impermanent. There is no happiness at all. And when the yogis actually see it that way, the yogi actually understand the first noble truth of the Buddha taught. The first noble truth is the suffering. There's sufferings in the body, there's sufferings in the mind, there's sufferings at birth, there's sufferings at death. So when we will see that way, then people will realize, slowly understanding the suffering, the natures of suffering, and what is the suffering that the Buddha talked about in the Four Noble Truths. And when people see that way, then they would see that, this is the truth about suffering. Our bodies is actually suffering in every single moment, in each risings and falling and each breathings and breathe out. There is not happiness at all. And because of that, each feelings that we have, that the feelings we have is also the same, that the feelings, either happiness or unpleasant or neutral feeling, is also come and it also goes away. And for the in-breath, no matter how short, how long, how heavy, how light the breathing can be, they also comes and they passes away. All that is just nothing but natural phenomena happening on itself, comes and pass away on its own terms. So when the people see that way, the yogi will be able to live at the present moment and understanding and have the penya, the right view. So that is talking about sitting meditations. What about walking meditation? So when the person practice walking meditation, the yogi can also observing the in-breath, out-breath as each walk. But then if the yogi, that is observing the breathing. But if the yogi want to observing the body, then the yogi can see that each right step, left step, right step, left step. So right step, left step is the conventional understanding to label, to tie the mind to the body. But when each step touching the ground, there would be touching, and that touching, the knowing mind touching is the work of the mind. But when the yogi touch the ground and feel whatever the sensation of the touching, that is actually contemplating the bodies in the body. And then if just only right step, left step, and the mind still have, because the mind works so fast, there's still gap there, and thinking can arise during that time, then yogi can actually increase the labeling or the contemplations by lifting, moving forward, and stepping down. That way, the mind would have more work to do. The mind would tie closer to the body, so therefore thinking and wandering mind cannot arise in the mind. So when a person practices vipassana meditation, it's important for the person to, first of all, direct the mind back into the body or back into the mind at the present moment. And when you direct the mind back into the body, then you have to know how the body works, what is the body is doing, what is the intrinsic nature or the characteristics of all the major elements that made up this body. And that is knowing the body. And knowing is wisdom. Not knowing is ignorance. And that is for the body. What about the mind? Again, when we direct the mind back into the mind, then we should be able to understand what is the mind doing. Is the mind thinking? Is the mind wandering into the past or the future? Is the mind having all kind of activities? If so, that is the work of knowing the mind, the contemplations of the minds in the mind. And when the yogi practice vipassana meditations, and the more progress the yogi made, the yogi will realize that there would be less thinkings in the mind. And because of less thinking, the mind is less conditioned by sadness, by worry, by lamentations. And that way the yogi can see that, this meditation, this method is actually works, and it's actually helped me to live more peaceful, to live happier. And that way that you can see that the yogis is progressing in the practice. So that is, again, Sarah just only the explanations in theory. And then after that, Sarah encouraged yogi to practice meditations for a little bit. And when practicing in this method, we practice according to the teachings of Mahasi Sayadaw, and he taught us how to pay attention to the risings and falling of the abdomen at the main object. So when the yogi paid attention to the risings and the falling of the abdomen, the yogi have to be mindful, have to be ardent, and wholeheartedly paying attention, follow the rising from the beginning to the end to see the manifestation of the wind element. And same thing, when the yogi observe the falling, the yogi should be able to see how the abdomen fall and what is the characteristic, or what are the manifestations of the wind element when, or other element when the abdomen's falling from the beginning to the end. And during that time, when the yogi contemplating and observing the risings and falling, there would be thinking arising in the mind, or wondering feelings of mind, whatever had happening in the mind as well, in the feeling, the yogi should notice it right away and make note of it. So for example, if thinkings arise, then we would contemplate thinking. And if there's pain arise, then we would contemplate pain. or happiness arise, or pleasant feelings arise, then we also always contemplate right away either happiness, or pleasant feelings, unpleasant feelings. So that's all I have for today, summary of the translations. After that, Sarajis and the Sangha chant some sutta in order to share merit to a father of the yogi. And Sariji say that now when we practice Vipassana meditation, we actually practicing to cultivate wisdom. And that is very important. But in order to cultivate or in order to practice, we also need to have merits. And because merit can help us get the condition to fulfill and give us more chances to practice. So therefore, we should cultivate both merits as well as wisdom. And the yogi asked the Sangha as well as Saraji to chant. I'm not sure, should I translate some of the chanting into English or should I just let it go? Okay, so why don't I just do two translations of the chanting. So the first chanting, okay, so one of the chanting, we talked about the impermanence of things. And the meaning of the chantings is called anicca, impermanence. And it goes, all conditioned things are impermanent, by nature arising and passing away. Having arisen, they cease, their stillness bring happiness. So that is one of the translation of the chanting. And the next chanting, the end of it, Sayagyi chants is that by the powers of the Buddha, by the powers of the Dhamma, and by the power of the Sangha, may the person be well, happy, and peaceful. And that is, I think that is it for today's translation. Thank you so much for listening. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu, 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 Sayale. Thank you so much for another wonderful translation. And we will see you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, host. Goodbye.